Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending Guidance Software's webinar transitioning from EnCase version 6 to EnCase version 7. This is part 1 of a two-part series. Today we're going to be featuring two great speakers. The first is Ashley Hernandez. She's our former product manager for EnCase Forensic and EnCase Enterprise, and now she is a master trainer here at Guidance Software. The second is our current product manager, Ken Mazzotta. Before we get started with our featured guests, my name is Robert Bond. I'm going to be your host and moderator for this session. If you have any questions during the session itself, please submit them electronically through the Q&A dialog box on the bottom right portion of your screen. We're going to answer your questions in the Q&A session at the very end of the presentation. And as always, if you don't have a chance to submit a question during the presentation, or you're watching an archived version of the webinar, you can submit your questions to me at robert.bond@guidancesoftware.com. Now there's really two goals for us to do in doing this webinar. The first is to get our V6 users to start enjoying the benefits of V7, and the second is to further train our V7 users so that they can better understand the software, get more comfortable using it. So for the V6 folks, we got a great offer, limited time offer. Normally, moving to V7 is around $3,290. We have actually cut the upgrade price half, from $896 down to $450, and then thrown in the 3-day transitions training for free, and that had a retail of $1,795. We've never done this since the product was released back in June 2011. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. With that little promotional offer, let's get started with the resources. So for those who attend the webinars regularly, we walk through this, and so I'll do this fairly quickly. We have free startup training. So if you go to our brand new website and look at the little 3 lines on the right, click on those 3 lines, you're going to see training. Click on training, and you're going to see the full training web page. On the bottom right portion of your training web page, in really small font, you're going to see free startup training. Now I encourage you to go to the EnCase Forensic piece or just startup training, and you'll have a 10-part 4-hour training where you can really get introduced to the software. The second resource is, of course, EnCase App Central, and I'm going to show you the top 10 most downloaded apps in just a second. But we now have 146 free apps or NScripts. I encourage you to check it out. The third is our Digital Forensics Today blog, which we write about one of 3 different things. 1, what's going on in the digital forensic industry. 2, what's going on with V7 in new releases, or maybe highlights, product spotlights on new features. And we also allow our the folks that create our apps to write about their certain apps or NScripts, or our third-party partners like IEF and Belkasoft and folks like that to write about their integrations. And then of course we have collateral. So here are our top 10 most downloaded NScripts over the last 3 months. As you can see, we have a brand new entry. The Shellbags Parser by Simon Key has been downloaded more than any other NScript in the last 3 months, which is really saying something, because VSS Examiner and CBUSB Mounted Devices Report have always led App Central, at least for the past 2 years. We also have link file and jump list parser and prefetch parser, which are brand new to App Central as well. I encourage you to check those out. These are our training classes, and since this is a forensic webinar, I put CF1 and CF2 up top. They're the most popular with our forensic crowd, and in terms of going out and getting your NC like the 4,500 other NC certified folks out there, these are the cornerstone classes. So we're going to have a quick spotlight feature, and we're going to look at 2 features today. The first is the new features, or the free modules you get with EnCase Forensic 7 that you didn't get with 6, and you can see them all listed there. The Smartphone Examiner, Virtual File System module, which a lot of investigators love just to use to see what the target was seeing prior to the investigation. The Physical Disk Emulator, the Decryption Suite, which is now updated with every dot release of EnCase, and the Fast Block Software Edition, which is integrated within EnCase. The smartphone module is an excellent module. It works seamlessly with EnCase. It's not going to replace your Celebrite UFED, for example, or Paraben tool, but it certainly works well when you have a phone, Apple i6 or something like that, that it recognizes, and you can pull all that information into an easy-to-read report, just like the one that you see on the screen right there. Also with 706, the second feature is the remote forensic capability. This was released in 706, allows an investigator to use EnCase Forensic to deploy a servlet to a target machine to do triage and collecting on that particular machine. So for version 6 users, this was just like FIM and works far better. It's really done in 3 easy steps. You create an encryption key, then deploy the servlet, then connect to the target machine, and just like you would see an evidence file inside of EnCase, you're going to see that machine come up inside of EnCase so you can start your triage. You could do this all within the acquire evidence window in EnCase. You create a servlet for each different operating system, and each different servlet is encrypted, so you create your own encryption for that particular servlet. Save that in your EnCase folder so you'll have it and you don't have to recreate it next time. And then you can collect the evidence or information that you want from that particular device, including physical and process memory. So hopefully that helps, those 2 features, and now we'll get started with Ashley. Here's her agenda today. So she's going to start with just how to create a new case in EnCase V7, all the way through reporting for today. With that, Ashley, I encourage you to take it over. Thank you.
Hi, this is Ashley Hernandez. I am going to be showing you today a little taste of what we go over in our transitions class. So in our transitions class, what we cover is 2 parts. The first part is, for those of you who are familiar with version 6, we want to show you where to find in version 7 the functionality you're familiar with. So we know you have a large caseload, and we want to help you to at least get started with the workflow you're familiar with in version 6 in version 7. The second part of this webinar that we're going to go over how to actually utilize the evidence processor to speed up that examination process. So that's going to be the place where we're going to focus on the new functionality in version 7 with the processor and how to set that up to take best advantage of it once you're ready to move into processing. So in this session, I'm really going to focus on where functionality is that you're used to using in version 6 in version 7. We know your muscle memory is very strong in 6. You've probably had it for up to 5 or 6 years that you've been using 6. And so we want to show you how easy it is to find those pieces and start to work with 7 in the same way you were familiar with working it in 6. So there are some new things we're going to look at, and we're going to start as if we're working a new case, so I can take you step by step from the beginning of creating a new case all the way through to reporting in the way that you would not be processing your case. You'll have to decide whether the case is one that you want to process or not. We're going to take this as an example of a case maybe where you're just trying to decide if a machine is one you want to spend full-time processing on, or you're trying to exclude it from your investigation as not relevant. So we're not going to do any processing in this one today, but hopefully this will get you started on the path to taking 6 for your investigations. So on my desktop, I have EnCase 7 open. I actually have EnCase 709 open for us. That is the latest version that's been released. So if you don't have that, go ahead and register your dongle through my account so you can get the latest code through the email. That'll allow you to get the update right away. When I'm dropped onto the home screen in EnCase 7, I can see a list of my recent cases here on the top. Any of these are hyperlinked, so I can open them and start working with one of those cases. I can also have multiple cases open at the same time. My active case would have a green arrow next to it on the home screen. But for this example, we're going to make a new case. So from the home screen web pages, I'm going to use new case. When we open up the new case dialog, you'll notice it's different than the standard dialog in 6, but in general, we're doing the same type of setup when we open up a new case. We are going to choose to create a case name. I'm going to call it case 123 AB7. Best practice is always to have a naming convention for your case. We don't have one in this instance, so I'm just giving an example. But you'll notice as I create a case name, down below I have a base case folder. In version 7, we work off of the base case folder to have one root folder for all of your cases to live underneath. So if I have my cases folder here, I have a C sample cases folder. Underneath that, I'm going to get a folder for each one of the cases that I create, and my case file is going to live within that folder. So I have my case folder for each case, keeping everything separate, and my case file will automatically be created underneath it. Now in 6, you're familiar with having an export and a temp that you would have chosen where to place those. We actually place those automatically for you directly inside of this case folder. So you don't have to create those temp and export directories separately. We're not going to be processing this case, so we're not necessarily going to be using our primary evidence cache for indexing, but we're still going to place the evidence cache folder. We're going to need to specify a place to put any of our working files while we work with this evidence. So whether it's a preview or it's something you're going to process, you're going to need to have an evidence cache location. And since we're just going to be previewing and working with this temporarily, I'm going to put the evidence cache right in the same folder as my case file. So it's going to create a folder underneath my case folder for this evidence cache. So that's what this option does. If you wanted to place it somewhere else, you could uncheck it and place it in a different location. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about processing in the next webinar. We can also choose to back up our case. That's what's set here. There's no way to change the increments on the backup, but if you want to set that, you could choose to. I am going to set my case values, though, my case information. I'm going to use the F2 key to set these fields. Let's see. We're going to make this an example case number. 1, 2. Let's change that there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My name is going to be placed here, and the description of the case. This case information could be saved as part of your template. You probably wouldn't want to save your case number or the description over and over for your template, but these templates up above, if we were to switch between the templates, could have more or less information associated with your case. If you don't call your examiners an examiner, you call them an investigator, you could change the name of this field so that it matched what you use in your organization. So we've set up our basic cases. I am going to use the basic template that ships with EnCase, and I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I'm not using a backup, and it's just warning me that I'm not choosing to backup, and I'm going to click yes. All right, so once we're dropped into a case, we're still left on these navigational pages that are helping us find what the next step would be. In this case, we're going to be adding evidence to our case, and so I'm going to use the Add Evidence button. In version 6, we had one button that allowed you to preview devices or add evidence files or do a network preview. Instead of having those all mixed into one dialog, we've now separated them out into separate options. So the option I'm going to show you first is how we can preview a local device. This would be anything connected to my local machine here. So on Add Local Device, we see that first we get to choose some options about what we're previewing. So I could choose to mark write blocked any device connected through Tableau or a legacy fast block. New to version 7 is the ability to only show devices connected to your local machine that are write blocked. This could prevent you from previewing a drive that hasn't yet been write blocked because it wouldn't show up in our next preview screen. You also can choose to show physical or process memory. It doesn't make as much sense on your local machine since you likely don't want your local machine's physical or process memory, but this would work with our direct preview servlet that we have, the ability to do that across the wire. We're going to cover the direct preview in another webinar. So we've got just our default options here. We're going to click Next. It's going to read the devices connected to my machine, and now you'll see that for every volume connected to a physical drive, we actually show it as a child or an item underneath that physical drive. This helps in version 7 so that you don't get confused which volume is associated with the physical drive. Physical drives always show up as numbers, and our volumes are going to show up as letters. So I'm going to choose to preview the physical drive 2. This is a thumb drive connected to my computer that's just 3.7 gigs, and choose Finish. So when we choose to add a piece of evidence, we're going to notice that a tab called the Evidence tab is opened at the top. And when we're viewing evidence at the top level, this is like our device's view in version 6. We can see information about the device, whether it's an evidence file or a preview. In this case, it's actually reading the serial number information and model information of my thumb drive. It's also going to give me, if this is an evidence file, things like if there were any read errors, CRC errors. All of the information you used to have on your device tab is integrated into this evidence tab. So instead of just a preview, we're also going to add an evidence file to this case. And in this case, instead of going back to the home screen, where I could choose to add an evidence file, for those of you familiar in version 6, we're going to use the Add Evidence File dropdown from the top menus. We use the Add Evidence File dropdowns just from the top like you did in 6. So here it's going to let me navigate on my computer using just a regular Windows Browse type window to find an evidence file or multiple evidence files to add to my case. So I'm going to open that up. All right, so we have 2 evidence files in our case, and we're ready to go ahead and start viewing the contents of the evidence. So on the Evidence tab, we get a choice when we want to view the entries or the equivalent of the entries. We could either click on the name of the file, and that will open just that one file, or we could blue check both evidence, both the preview and the acquired evidence, and choose to open them together. So if you want to view multiple pieces of evidence in the same view, on the Evidence tab, you're going to blue check them both, and then you're going to choose Open. So these are going to open up, and we're going to parse the file systems and then display them for you. So now you'll notice we're on the Evidence tab, but it says Viewing Entries. So we've actually drilled in equivalently like as if you were on a web page, clicked to a sub page, and that's going to be our entries. So here's our preview of our local drive, and here's our evidence file that's been acquired. So I'm going to kind of collapse our local drive preview, and we're going to focus most of our time showing where the options were that you're familiar with in 6 and 7 on our acquired evidence here. So we've opened them together, and as you guys are familiar, most of the options for EnCase are available on the right click, and that is no different in our version 7. It wasn't always the same in earlier versions, so if you tried it back 2 years ago, 2 or more years ago actually, you may have seen that not all the options were there on the right click. But for the most part, everything you're familiar with is on the right click now, and they're just grouped into logical categories. So I'm going to blue check a couple files. I'm actually going to do it at the folder level, and it'll just propagate down like you're used to. And I'm going to right click, and most of the entry options that you're familiar with are now going to be on the Entries menu here. So if I have blue checked items, I could choose to do Copy Files. This is the equivalent of Copy and Erase. So in other words, anything that's blue checked that I choose to do Copy Files on is going to copy to a single location all of the files in just a flat folder. It's not going to save any of the folder structure. It's just going to give me all the actual file entry data that I have blue checked. So I could do that from the Entries tab. If I did want to preserve that folder structure, I could choose to do Copy Folders, and again, it's going to work off of the blue checks. New to version 7 is the concept of a result set, and we're going to talk about more about this when we talk about processing, because we can actually choose to do other operations on a subset of files. And we can create a result set from blue checked files. We could create a result set from the results of searching. We could create a result set from filtering. Basically, anytime you have a set of items that you want to do further operations on, you've narrowed down what you're looking at, and you want to then either process them or search them, you can create a result set and then just do those operations on the items that are in that result set. So we can create a result set from just blue checked files here on the Entries menu. We also have the ability to do View File Structure. So if I want to go and find a PST file, we still have home plate, and we can still double click on the file extension column to sort by file extension. I'm going to type PST to jump me down to any PSTs. And I can see that I have a few here in my case. To enable the view file structure, again, I'm going to right-click, and from the Entries submenu, choose to View File Structure. And I'm going to go ahead and parse the PST. And as always, in the bottom right, you're going to see the status of the action you just did. It'll be green and processing as it goes and parses the PST. And as soon as it's finished, that status bar will disappear. What I notice, though, is now I have a PST that's available here for me to go ahead and open. So if I wanted to view the contents of this particular PST, I see there's a plus sign on it, and I can click the PST, and now I have the ability to view the emails inside of this particular archive. So if I found this email here, food ingredients, and I found that this attachment was relevant to my investigation, I could go ahead and without processing, I just am kind of clicking around. I can right-click and choose to bookmark that single item. So this is an email that's interesting to me. I'm going to give it a comment, and on my destination folder, choose where I'd like to place it. These folders that are created here in the Bookmarks tab that I have access to when I bookmark are part of my template. So if you wanted different folders, you could add them underneath an existing folder. I could take email here and make a subfolder by writing a new folder. Or I could change my template so I had different folders to start with. Right now I'm just going to go ahead and place them in the email folder and click OK. So I have drilled into my email, and I'm still in the Evidence tab, but now I'm viewing email. If I want to go back to the Entries view, I go ahead and just use the back button. And that's going to now have me saying Viewing Entries. So I didn't have to navigate to another tab. I was able to drill into that directly from the Entries tab. So that's the ability to still go ahead and view email. So we had our items blue checked. This is our sample evidence. And we found on the entries we could do copy files, copy folders, create a sub list of items that was relevant, view file structure. The next thing that we're going to look at is the ability to do hash and signature analysis outside of the processor. So if you have entries blue checked, you can choose to do hash and sig selected. We conduct both an MD5 and a SHA-1, so you can see both of those in the table, as well as we can do entropy, which I'm not going to do right now, but you could choose to, and verifying file signatures. So those are the options I'm going to go ahead and run on this particular case. And since I only have this evidence file blue checked, it's running it on just the evidence file because I'm working on the selected items. If I wanted to, I could also blue check the preview and do hash and signature on a preview. Anything that I can do on an evidence file, I can go ahead and do on a preview. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. We're going to note, though, that it says these entries must be reloaded in the Evidence tab to see changes. So we're going to talk about that when we come to work with these hash values in a little bit. But just note that it does remind you that you're going to have to reload your evidence to be able to see the hash values. That's probably one of the biggest gotchas that we see in our transition classes. So I'm going to click OK. And that's going to go ahead and start off my hashing and signature analysis. So we're working our way through these options on the right click, and we saw for entries we have the standard ones available. We also have the standard bookmark options available for either the single item, meaning the highlighted item that I have in the table. Selected items would work off the blue checks, folders would work off the current folder. Table view is new for version 7, and we'll probably show that in the webinar in January. Raw text would be our equivalent of sweeping data. We're going to show that in a little bit. And data structure and transcript text we'll show a little bit later as well. So we can still do bookmarking off the right click. We can also off of the right click choose to blue check items and create our logical evidence files. And then one area that I wanted to show you is on the device, we have the option to show the disk view. So we used to have a whole separate tab for the disk view. Now if you want to see the disk view for a specific evidence file or device, you select the device and choose disk view. And that's going to pop it up as its own separate tab. A cool new thing about the disk view is when you highlight a sector, you're going to see the actual file entry information for the file for that particular area of the drive. So you can leave the disk view up once you have it up from the evidence and go ahead and navigate through, and as you click on different areas, if you flip to the disk view, you'll end up being on that file. So you can flip back and forth, and that's how you access it from version 7. You also can do all your partition, user-defined partitions, additions, and deletions from the disk view. All right, so those are our general browsing options. We can browse, we can copy files out, we can do signature analysis, hash analysis, and we can mount specific PSTs. We could also mount zip files. All of that can be done on this preview or evidence file. But the next area that I want to show is our actual keyword searching. Now we can choose to keyword search either specific selected items. For instance, I'm going to blue check, let's do unused disk area and unallocated space, and we'll do the users folder. So I've blue checked a good portion of this actual evidence file. It is a sample evidence file that we had made available to you guys to work with. And I'm going to choose to keyword search those particular areas of the drive. If I wanted to keyword search the whole evidence file, I could choose to go back up to this top level and search all of my evidence in my case. But I'm going to choose to search just the selected items in this view. So if I want to do just selected items, I'm going to select them with blue checks, and I'm going to go to Raw Search Selected on the Evidences toolbar. So we used to have global and local keywords, and instead of storing those and displaying them in the case, we now store them in files that you could share with other users. So if I want to make a new local search, I'm going to choose to go to New Raw Search Selected. And instead of having to worry if there's any other global words selected at the time, I just go ahead and create the keywords I want to do. So if I want to make a new keyword, I can type in the expression like you would before. If you don't give it a name, it's going to refer to it by its search expression. And I can go ahead and click OK to create that keyword, and I'll see it listed in the table below. I can also create multiple keywords. Maybe we're going to do EnCase, and we'll do webinar. I'm going to do those in Unicode and click OK. Now maybe I've created these keywords and decided I want to make a couple of them case sensitive. I want to make Ashley and EnCase case sensitive. Instead of having to edit each of them, I can actually modify them using the checkboxes in the table. It allows us the ability to modify things without having to go in and edit. That's a new control to version 7. So I have these created. I'm going to give them a name. If they were specific to my case, I would choose to store them with my case. So I would navigate to my Cases folder. Let's see here. I'll just actually put them on my desktop. And I could say example keywords. And that would allow me to save these in case I wanted to refer to them later. Which keywords did I use with this particular case? And it's going to store them in a file with these keywords. So I'm going to kick those off. Same search options as we had in 6. And as they're searching, you're going to see them start to show in the bottom here that it's doing its search. But maybe I wanted to use keywords that I had already created, kind of the equivalent of global keywords. I could go ahead and from my Raw Search Selected, I have this list called soda. We're going to consider these global keywords. And I'm going to select soda from my recently used list of keywords. And here it's got my keywords already populated with the options. So I don't have to recreate these each time. I just save it as a file, and I'm going to go ahead and say soda. And we'll make this example soda. And I could save this again with my case, so I have a record of all the searches that I could redo or revisit if I needed to before going to trial or something. I'll have a list of which ones I ran, and I'll click OK on these ones. Notice we have some that have grep here. I used a grep term down below, and then I've got some leet speak-like words, soda, bomb with a 0, and then 7-up, because that's relevant to our sample data that we have. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and kick these off. I can see that my other search has actually finished. but I'm going to kick these ones off, and we're going to look at the search hits as they come in. So one of the things you're familiar with doing in version 6 is previewing keywords as they come in. So we're going to view our search using the View Search to get to that tab. When the tab comes up, the sub-tab for keywords becomes available. And here were the keywords I previously searched for, the example keywords, but now I have the refresh button. And when I choose to refresh, I'm going to be able to pull in the new keywords for what I'm currently searching. I'm going to see if it gets more hits. So we're going to let those ones start to work. We can see on our results that our previous keywords are shown under results as a group. So this, if you look at the results, is the results of all the files that have EnCase, Ashley, or webinar. So if I scroll through them, you'll notice they can have EnCase. We're going to see EnCase more. And this one has webinar. So in one place, I can actually see all the files that were responsive to any one of the keywords. It doesn't have to have all of them. It doesn't have to have just one of them. It's going to combine those together. And let's go back to our search here. And we've got the refresh. Oops, sorry, didn't do it fast enough. The refresh would have shown me I could have clicked on these as they were running. So if I click on 7-Up, for instance, I can see just the hits for 7-Up. Now I have this set to use the Review tab, which is my preferred view when I'm reviewing search hits for version 7. It's going to show me just the hit with the context around it and the line number that that hit is on. If I want to see the whole file, I can actually use the line number as a hyperlink to the whole file. And then I'm going to see the whole file with the hit highlighted within the file. If I want to go from item to item or hit to hit, I can use the next hit. And if there's only one in this one, it's going to take me to the next file if I say next hit. And I can scroll through the hits. The other option I can do is choose to use compressed view. And in compressed view, we're going to center the hits. So you can really compare if it's the same hit in the file, but just in multiple locations. And you can actually go from next item to next item. So here I can see all the hits in this item. And I can decide, okay, this item is relevant, or I can do next hit and it'll go to the next file with hits. So compressed view can be toggled off and on. And when we're looking at raw search hits, it is searching against the text and hex view, so that's where you're going to see the hits. When we process a case, which we're going to show in the next webinar, you're going to see your hits in the transcript and the doc view, because that's where we extract the text for our index. So we're going to be in text and hex when we do our keyword searches, and we can see there are actually 10,000 hits for 7-Up, but they're in only 64 files. So if I've reviewed all 64 files to see if any of them are relevant, I may not have to view all 10,000 hits, which would make my review time a little bit shorter. You may have to review all 10,000 because that's what you're required to do. You can absolutely do that in 7. But if you find one file has 1,500 hits and you know that that file is just not relevant to your case, maybe it's something that has a known hash value, then we can go ahead and skip over that one, and you won't have to review each one of those individual hits. All right, so that's how we view our keyword search hits and do searching outside of our evidence processing. So let's bookmark one of these hits. I'm just going to pick one of these. May or may not have been relevant, but I'm going to go ahead and right-click and, again, choose to bookmark our single item. Actually, this time I'll do raw text. So we can see in the report at the end that you can actually show the swept text. So interesting, swept text. I'm going to put a comment. And we'll go ahead and put this one in Internet Artifacts. It's probably not there, but I'm just going to randomly pick one so we can see data in different folders there. All right. So I mentioned that you may want to find items by their hash or ignore items by their hash. So let's go back to our evidence. And previously, we chose to hash and conduct signature analysis on these evidence files. And so if I look over, I'll notice though that the MD5 and SHA-1 hash are blank. And this is why I pointed out that option when we were doing our hash, that you need to refresh your view to be able to see the MD5 and SHA-1. So we were viewing entries. To refresh, you're going to use the back button. And then I'm going to just refresh the view on the sample evidence because I'm really only focusing on that one for this case. And when I go and look at it, I'm going to home plate and scroll over. Now I see my MD5 and SHA-1. So you just need to do a refresh only once as soon as MD5 and SHA are finished to get that data to populate for you. All right, so we have our MD5 and SHA-1, and now I want to connect my hash library so I can actually view any of the notable items. So I've previously created the hash library. We don't have enough time, unfortunately, in this webinar to cover everything that's in the transition class, including creation and modifying hash libraries, but I can show you how to connect your library to your case. So we're going to go to our case, and we're going to choose hash libraries. And where it says you get the option of 2 hash libraries, you can have as many hash sets as you want in each library. We're just giving you the ability to have 2 in case you have multiple. Maybe you have hash library specific to this case that you're creating, or this matter, and then you have another global hash library that everyone in your department shares that has a white and black list of hash sets. So we're going to go ahead and pick one hash library. And to add it, I'm just going to double click on the hash library path. And on my desktop, I actually have a hash library folder. And I'm going to click OK. Now our hash file format has changed in version 7. We're actually using more of a database structure, so it scales to millions of hash sets and hash values. So you can't just share files. You're going to build that database in a folder, and you'll just point to that folder. But it could be a network location. I just happen to have mine on my desktop. And I only just have one hash set because we're trying to do a fast example, but this could have as many hash sets as you like. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now my hash library is associated with my case. So now I can do some filtering based on my hash library. So I've hashed my files. I can do that either as an individual process off the right click or in processing. And now I'm going to run a filter to find entries by their hash category. Now our filters give us the option when you open them up, do you want to run them on the current view, meaning anything that's in this tab right now. If you had multiple devices like we showed before where you have a preview and you also have an evidence file, you could say, oh, just do it on the current device. Or you could say to run it on all the evidence files in your whole case. We're just going to do it on our current view and click OK. And we're going to do notable files. Now you can run this on your whole view, or you could run it on selected entries only. Let me actually show you how you can run it on selected entries only. So I'm going to click cancel a second. And let's say we run it on these first three or four folders. So I'm going to search for anything that's notable in this first area of the drive. So I'm going to filter, find entries by hash category, click OK. The selected entries, I'm looking for notable. If I had more hash sets, any of the categories available on those hash sets would be options here on my filter. They'll automatically show up. And I'll click OK. And now it's going to show me that there were 3 files that actually had matching hash sets. So those are the items that are matching that notable hash category. Now you'll notice that we ended up showing a table view. And for those of you familiar with how it worked in version 6, this is a table view. We could change it back to the way it was in version 6 by switching your split mode to tree table. In general, I caution you to not change your split modes most of the time because the way that we have the pane set up, this pane being the tree, this pane being the table, you don't need to change. So if you're ever trying to figure out where something went, I would not try and change your split mode as a general practice. The only time that I change my split mode is for filtering. You only have to change it once to tree table, and that'll allow you to then narrow in and say, okay, was there anything in this folder? Nope. Anything in this folder? Nope. Oh, there's the 3 by using your home plate. So if you're familiar with that functionality in 6, it will work by changing your split mode to tree table, and you can always tell you have an active filter now by this orange bar being active. If you're not familiar with doing it that way, I highly recommend you leave it on the table view, because that'll basically show you anything responsive to the filter on your whole set of evidence that you have visible or selected. So that's the only time I ever switch my split mode, and I typically use tree table just to get the equivalent functionality of what I had in 6. All right, so that's how we could get a couple of files that way. We're going to go ahead and take these 3 blue checked files, and we're going to call them our documents. So I'm going to bookmark the selected items, and I'm going to put them in our documents folder and click OK. And then I'm going to turn off my filter by just checking the X for that filter. And notice your Dixon box is up at the top here. You can use your Dixon box to blue check or uncheck the whole set, just like you could in 6. And also when you're on a file, notice your GPS is in the bottom of the very bottom. So we get the actual whole bottom of the screen to be able to use as our GPS, meaning give me the location of the file with its full path, as well as the physical sector, logical sector, cluster, sector offset, file offset, and links. All of that information is available for you in the bottom. All right, so we have our items. Let's also show a couple of our other filters. We can bookmark a few more things for our report, and then I'm going to go ahead and move over to questions. So as far as our filter, we have filters that will go ahead and show us all the pictures in our case. So we're going to say pictures, run that on everything here on our evidence file. I have it in tree table mode, so I have to home plate to show the responsive items. I could flip it over into gallery, and we'll pick a picture of a car, picture of log lines. I make sure with my Dixon that there's only 2 selected there. Actually, let's do a couple more. So we'll do 4. I'll take that off. And then we're going to bookmark the selected item. I'm going to put that in my pictures folder. There's nothing special about the pictures folder that means you can only bookmark pictures into it. I could bookmark pictures into any of these folders, and it's still going to show me the picture in the report. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I've bookmarked some pictures. I'm going to turn that filter off. And we bookmarked an email, a document. Let's go ahead and look at what we have in our report. So I'm going to go to the View menu and choose to look at the report that's associated with this template. So when I created the template at the beginning of the case, it actually had the report formatting all built into it for me. So here we've got the report. It filled in my case information on the title page. It also put my case information in the header on the subsequent pages. It gives me a list of the evidence in my case, and if I wanted to make notes on my bookmarks folder, they would show up here. Actually, let me real quickly show you how that works. So if I go to View, Bookmarks, here are my folders, and I could choose to make a note just like I could in version 6. So I'm going to say installed software, EnCase 709 for this case. Just some note there, so that when I come to the report, it'll regenerate it. And now under my notes, I'll see that there's a note of which software was installed. Then for the documents I bookmarked, I'm going to get their the general information, including dates and times, and their MD5. If I entered a comment, that would show. There's a bunch of stuff that I bookmarked there. I also bookmarked some pictures. So here's the picture information, including the path, dates, times, MD5, and then an embedded image of the picture. For the email, I see the full email, including the header information at the top and my comment. And then I show the attachment, which if we were to export this report, I could actually access the report, the attached item if I choose to export items. And then for my swept text, I can see here was that item where I bookmarked it as Internet Artifacts, and underneath it I have the swept text displayed right under my comment. If I don't want to use any of these folders, I can always hide them. We cover how to customize our report template in the transition course. So I have my report. I can choose to right-click on the report anywhere, save as, and now I can choose which format I want to save it in. So if I choose HTML and export items, all of those things that showed as blue hyperlinks will actually hyperlink when you export them. So I know that's a very quick overview of kind of all of the things you need to find when you're moving from 6 to 7 if you're keeping the same workflow. What I didn't highlight in here and what I'm looking forward to showing you in our next webinar is going to be, okay, here's what was in 6, but what's brand new to 7 that really can speed up your investigation. We're going to focus on the index and how keyword searching is different than indexing and why you might prefer indexing once you get more familiar with it for at least getting started. And then we're also going to talk about all the different ways you can process your case, whether you want to focus in on a little area first and then expand it out, or if you're going to work to have them all prepared for you in advance by processing in bulk and then focusing on individual files. All right, so talked a lot. I'm going to hand it over to Robert for a minute, and then he's going to come back and we're going to talk over some questions.
Great, thanks very much, Ashley. We're actually going to do Q&A today with our product manager, Ken Mazzota. Before we do Q&A, just want to remind you the webinar will be on demand in our on-demand section at guidancesoftware.com tomorrow, so you can view this webinar or pass this along to a colleague. Before we start with the Q&A as well, I want to let you know you can still submit your questions in the Q&A dialog box on the bottom right portion of your screen. I'm scribbling all the questions that we have here and sending them off to Ken to get ready to answer. Before we get started with that, though, I really do want to sincerely thank all of our V6 and V7 users for attending the webinar and also for being such loyal customers. Just circling back to the offer that was made at the beginning of the webinar, if you have any questions about that offer or you want to know how you can get access to that 3-day on-demand transitions training, please give us a call at 1-888-999-9712. And if we don't get a chance to answer your questions today in this Q&A session here, please email me at robert.bond@guidancesoftware.com. And if you have an urgent question or issue with the software, please call our technical support at 1-866-973-6577. With that, Ken, are you ready for the first question?
Yes, I am, Robert.
Fantastic. Well, the first question came in pretty quick. It was around case templates and customizing case templates. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So I believe the question was how to create a case template or save a case template once you've customized the case to your liking. And the answer is a really simple one. In the case menu, there's actually a Save As option. And it's notable in that you can not only save the parameters of the case itself, but included in that, like the examiner name and the fields that you've customized, but included in that is also the report template. So if you want to reuse not just the fields of your case that are specific to your department or your organization, but also if you have specific types of cases that you work with, different templates that you've customized, those are all included in the template as well.
All right, perfect. So you mentioned reporting just a second ago. Can you talk a little bit about reporting and how we've made that easier and more customizable for our users?
Sure. I see one of the questions in the box, which is, can you change reporting properties in bookmarks? And I think in general, to answer your question, Robert, we've done a lot to incorporate feedback from our customers in 7 about the complications of reporting. So to take a step back, once you've performed the hard work of painstaking analysis and review and your investigation is complete, determining what you want to share with an external audience is essentially, dragging the case over the goal line, and this can be time consuming. So while EnCase 7 provides really powerful tools to incorporate the findings of the investigation, as Ashley had shown, and it puts it into a very polished format, what we found is that that powerful, highly formatted, polished structure was complicated to customize. So what we've done is we've actually added a capability from bookmarks to customize your report templates using what we call a report template wizard. You can find it by basically adding a bookmark. You can say, add this bookmark folder to your report, and in that wizard, you can actually set the you can actually set how you want the fields, which fields you want to include, how you want the particular folder to display, how you want to handle specific items that are within the bookmark folder, and all this can be done very quickly to add that folder to the report template. Perform formatting so that it's just a right click. It's a few clicks away as opposed to having to go in and edit report templates. It's actually a very similar experience that you may be familiar with in EnCase 6, but there's a lot more power that you have, and the polished output format is of a much higher quality in 7. So that's something that is relatively recent. I think we rolled that out in the middle of 2014. So if you haven't taken a look recently, then that's a good reason to check out 7.
I agree, and Ashley has a great end script, a flexible reporting template that you can get from EnCase App Central. Just search on flexible reporting template, it'll come up. It was in the top 10 of our 160 free apps or 146 free apps for quite some time, so I encourage you to get that. So we get a lot of questions around OSX investigations. Can you talk a little bit about what we've done to kind of enhance or improve Mac support?
Sure. There's only so much that Ashley can cover in a webinar such as this, but we've done a lot to improve not just the fit and finish and usability of the tool, but we know that there's also functional improvements that need to be made just to keep up with the times. So in comparison with even just a few years ago, OS X and Mac investigation volumes have continued to grow, and we continue to hear that from our customers. In support of this need, EnCase 7 we've really doubled down and incorporated several features, several capabilities specific to Mac investigations. We'll start with the comprehensive support that we offer for HFS Plus file system. This is the OS X file system that's used across all Macs. And we not just support the file system at a base level, but we also extend it to parsing extended file attributes, rather obscure artifacts like double files. We provide the ability to mount and see inside OS X specific disk images like DMGs, bundles, sparse bundles, and we also, in fact, that extends to the ability to even decrypt the containers that are encrypted with File Vault 1, which is the first iteration of encryption technology. We've also rolled out a OS X processor module, which pulls out specific artifacts fromplists, both the XML and binary variety, as well as system event logs. And we added processing analysis of Mac mail formats, which are primarily EML and EMLX. Most recently, we added support for our remote forensic-based capability to support the Yosemite release of OS X. There's a whole lot of security measures that have been added into OS X 10.10 Yosemite, and we have, as an Apple development partner, we've incorporated and mitigated through the development network process, and our servlet is compatible with OS 10.10 Yosemite and allows you to investigate Macs over the wire. Coincidentally, that also allows you to investigate File Vault 2 base volumes, which are encrypted logical volumes on a Mac, and that can be on SSDs, that can be on core storage. The File Vault 2 is on top of core storage. That can be the Fusion drives, which are hybrid SSD spinning platter drives as well. So I really could go on this for an entire webinar, but it's worthwhile to mention, I think, a couple of resources that you want to check out. One is the blog, which actually has a number of articles on examining artifacts within Macs, like the quick look cache, or being able to extract keychains, or being able to attack keychains even, which is where passwords are stored in OS X. We also have a number of apps that are created in support of our training department, in support of the blog, that are free on App Central, which are built for OS X investigations. So a lot of resources available, a lot of effort has been put in. If you haven't taken a look, I would encourage you to try.
Yeah, in our App Central newsletter, and for folks that don't get the App Central newsletter, you can just send me an email, again, at robert.bond@guidancesoftware.com. I'll go ahead and forward you that App Central newsletter. That highlights some of our best, most downloaded OS X apps. And then you can also go to EnCase App Central and click the left boxes, and it'll pull up the 22 Mac apps that are available to you. All right, so the next question is around decryption. Can you talk a little bit, Ken, and this is a very general question, about our decryption capabilities in EnCase version 7?
Sure. So a lot of our customers have to deal with full disk, full volume, and file level encryption, and it's increasingly common. More and more, it's becoming the default for investigations to have to deal with encryption. And if your tool, if the tool that you use can't decrypt the device or can't decrypt the container that you're looking at, then it really doesn't matter how many artifacts are parsed or how faithfully the evidence is preserved or how fast it goes. You're not going to find much, and that is a really inconvenient problem. So, we work with encryption vendors, and encryption vendors are not really incentivized to make it easy to decrypt their protection. That's why they're good at what they do. But this is exactly what the investigators need. So EnCase 7 includes all of the fruits of the partnerships that we build with industry leaders that build encryption technologies, and we deliver fully supported decryption capabilities, working in collaboration with these partners. Some of these partners include Symantec endpoint encryption, PGP whole disk encryption, Sophos Safeguard, WinMagic, SecureDoc, Dell Data Protection, McAfee, and Drive Encryption, and more. So we hear that in many cases, I hear from investigators that, I hear it quite frequently that this decryption capability, XYZ, saved my bacon. It's good in a tight situation, and in many cases, it's kind of the first step.
All right, great. I like that quote, by the way. So we hear a lot of times, what folks loved about version 6, and we do customer satisfaction surveys all the time still with people that are using version 6, and what they love about it is that it's flexible. They're able to kind of triage a case pretty easily, and in version 7, with the learning curve for most folks, they felt like it was a little more inflexible. What would you say to those folks to make it easier to triage their case or kind of look at information and just get a good sense of what the case contains before going in and processing the information?
Yeah, that's a question that we hear quite frequently, is that I just want to take a quick look at my case. I just want to take a quick look at my data, and that will inform where I go next with my investigation. I don't need to process it all. I don't need to put everything into an automated pipeline. I just want to take the first step so I can see what to do next. And I think this is a really important, it's a really important point to make, that investigators know that there's a diversity of problems. They know there's a lot of different situations that are put in. And it's not only about the understanding the data or processing the data and presenting the results, but it's also understanding that there's time constraints in many situations. And so there's no real single way to triage. Everybody has different, every case has different requirements for understanding of the data, and every situation has different time constraints. So EnCase 7 enables many different techniques, and I think it's really important to understand that there's a lot of flexibility built in as we've added over the years into the 7 platform. So at times, Ashley touched on this in the demonstration she was giving, but at times all you really need is a quick look at the evidence to determine if it's worth processing or if it's worth investigating further. So one of the things you can do, which is not readily apparent always, is when you open up an evidence file in EnCase in the evidence view, or multiple evidence files, you can view them all at once in a single view. And this was something that I think investigators became very familiar with in 6 that maybe wasn't as apparent in 7. So you can perform this. You can basically add multiple evidence files to your case, open them up simultaneously by blue checking them and clicking the open button. Then you have them all in a single tree view, and you can green plate them. You can perform a recursive search of all of the recursive listing of all the files on all the devices, and you can do this with evidence files or remote previews, and that allows you to quickly sort and collapse and blue check and select specific folders that you want to look at, looking at the entries and the metadata that's present. If you want to go a little bit deeper than that, if you want to go beyond just a quick look, of course you can process the evidence, but if you don't want to process it in its entirety, the evidence processor provides priorities. So you can prioritize your processing, which allows you to process user-created data first, so you can prioritize documents and emails and internet history to be prioritized first, independent of the rest of the evidence, and that can be an automated process. Or, as Ashley demonstrated, you can actually create search results. So if you have a particular folder that you're looking to, you're only interested, or if you're looking for particular files that are associated with the keyword, you can perform that search, which creates results, and then you can actually process just that result set. So that's a way of, if you still want to perform some processing, but you don't want to process, say, the entire terabyte drive with all of the unallocated space, you can do that very quickly and easily by just focusing on the result set. And then finally, it's fairly new capability to be able to remotely preview and remotely acquire data over the network using the direct network preview capability. So that's the EnCase servlet technology that Robert mentioned earlier. That's included with every version of EnCase 7, and as well as the EnCase portable capability, which allows you to perform on-scene triage. So we've got over-the-network and on-scene triage, all based on the EnCase 7 platform, which is included in the base product.
Right,
so
I hope that. Yep. Go ahead, Ken.
I guess my main point to wrap it up is that I hope that you take away that there's many options, and all of these can be adapted to your workflow as you see fit.
All right, perfect. And we're going to talk a little spoiler alert. We're going to talk about portable next week. So one last question. We always want to get our attendees out by the top of the hour, but I thought this was a really important question. Can you talk about how email is handled in version 7 versus version 6, please?
Sure. So all of the email is parsed into, all the email that we search for is parsed into records, and that includes, that inherits all the support that we had in version 6, but it expands on it. So I touched on Mac Mail, which is the email and the EMLX. We also have support for Lotus Notes formats as well as PSTs that we're very familiar with. And all this email is parsed into records, and that may be indexed and searched, including content and metadata, and I know Ashley's going to be talking about indexing a bit next week. But for email specifically, that may be searched and viewed by conversation as well as by related messages. And the key thing in 7 is that the overall experience is familiar. It's similar to how you would view mail in a mail client, and our customers have told us that those that have made the transition to 7 feel that the experience of reviewing mail is vastly improved.
And I can confirm that just through our satisfaction surveys. That feature gets more feedback, more positive feedback than does any other feature. Thanks, Ken. Really appreciate all your great, thorough answers. And thank you, everybody, for attending. When you click out of your WebEx interface, you're going to get a survey. We really would love your feedback around this webinar, the content, what you want to see in upcoming webinars, and then in the comments section, please let us know how you feel about version 7 or what you need from us to help transition more smoothly. With that, thanks everybody. We look forward to seeing you next week for part 2. Take care.